Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
Oregon State Police and the FBI stopped 2 vehicles heading north on US 395. One of those vehicles, a white truck being driven by Oregon militiaman LaVoy Finicum, speeds up after idling for a while. It is then that LaVoy Finicum and the other passengers run into a roadblock. Finicum leaves the vehicle and raises his hands when a man from behind him shoots Finicum for reasons that still remain unclear, according to this FBI-released video. Finicum's daughter claims that her father was murdered, execution style, with his hands in the air, an account backed up by an eyewitness to the incident. But the movement of LaVoy's arm on the FBI video raises even more questions. Did the movement of LaVoy's arm legitimize excessive force? Was he covering a wound, getting his balance in deep snow, or reaching for a weapon? What brought us to this dark day of liberty gone wrong?
Joe Biggs reporting for Infowars.com. Now, we just arrived in Oregon. We've come here to investigate the reports of armed militiamen overthrowing a federal government building here at the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge right outside of Burns, Oregon. Now, there have been reports that they have taken this building. They're using it as a place to protest against the U.S. government, who time and time again have overstepped their boundaries, taking up people's lands. It's not just happening in Nevada. It's not just happening in Oregon. It's happening back home where I live in Texas as well. This is a huge issue. It's a huge problem. And Ammon Bundy says that they do have credible intel from 3 different sources that they believe that the FBI will be coming down on them. Now, one of the gentlemen is sitting down over there right now on top of a sleeping bag, holding his rifle, said that he heard that the police department had issued a warrant for his arrest and that he was going to stand his ground and sit down over there for the next few days and not go inside, but sit out there. He said he'd rather spend his last days out in nature than to die inside of a building. Now, Ammon Bundy seemed very concerned that the FBI was going to come after them tonight at some point in time, possibly.
We need to learn from our mistakes. And I have been through this so many times, watching people get set up and manipulated. It makes me want to throw up. And the exact aftermath of what we predicted and the players and what was going on is now being confirmed.
About 400 or 500 yards down, there is a blockade by the police, by the FBI. We went down to that blockade, and surprisingly, they were pretty chill today. We went up and talked to them and said, look, we'd be willing to go in and talk to the people who are still in there. Reports are there's still about 5 people. Besides the ones who were arrested at the shooting of LaVoy Finicum, they had 8 people come out yesterday. 3 of them were arrested. The other 5 were let go. We are being told that there's still 5 people inside at this point. We said we'd be willing to go in and talk to them. We've got a history of covering these issues. And it really has gone on to a point where it's not about what's the grievances of these groups out here. It's now become about this militarized standoff and whether or not these guys are going to get out or whether or not they're going to go down fighting.
It's understood and acknowledged, has been for some time, even in the mainstream press, that the Russians, by whom I mean Putin, have gained control over 20% of U.S. uranium production. And in order for that deal to be signed off on, one of the federal agencies of the United States that had to okay it, because this is national security, is the State Department, then headed up by Hillary Clinton. During this negotiation, this period of time, some millions of dollars were coming into the Clinton Foundation from Canadian mining big shots, who obviously wanted this deal to go through and sell their company to Putin. So the ultimate irony of this whole thing is that you've got these sovereign cattle ranchers and their supporters sitting there in this area saying the feds have no right to be grabbing this land in the first place. And, you know, it's taking land away from the American people that belongs to the American people. And they could very well be talking about Russian land.
The 4 remaining holdouts, David Fry, Sandy Anderson, Sean Anderson, and Jeff Banta, are still holding their ground at the National Wildlife Refuge and now are demanding pardons for everyone involved. John Bound for Infowars.com.
And another excellent report from John Bound. Now let's talk about something that's much lacking in excellence, in my personal opinion, the debate system. Now, to be fair, most debates are pretty long, dry, boring, talking point, education, military, whatever else, fix the bridges and the roads and all that. And by and large, they've been pretty dry until Donald Trump came along. So I do give him that. We'll talk about Trump here in 1 second. But in my personal opinion, the guy who won this debate and wins pretty much every debate for the simple fact that he brings up real issues, Rand Paul. Rand Paul once again came out in grand fashion. Now, I know he's not the most charismatic guy, but I think he does bring real issues to the table. He doesn't just say, let's arm the military and have them go out and blow up the universe and be Team America world police. He said, let's look at these conflicts and see if we really need to go there in the first place. Also, people want to talk about stuff on the back end, these half measures of fixing the VA and all that, and that stuff does need to happen. Don't let me discredit that one bit. But why don't we look at it? Do we really need to send these guys out there in the first place to be in these places that they don't need to be, fighting for things they don't understand? There's a great quote in that movie, 13 Hours. One of the guys, he's on the roof and he's, trying to figure out whether or not he's going to survive the night or not. And he says, if I die today, my daughters will die. My daughters will know, knowing that I died fighting for a country that meant nothing to me in a situation I really didn't understand. That's what happens to so many of our fighting men and women. They're fighting for things they don't even clearly understand when they are just boots on the ground. They just know people are making policies above them. But let me get back to Rand Paul. He says he is the only candidate for the Liberty vote, and I do agree, because Rand Paul is the only guy who consistently comes out and opposes the NSA, domestic spying, militarized police, on and on and on. And it's not just my opinion. People like Time Magazine, they said that Paul took full advantage of his primetime slot, and Rand went on to say he's the only choice for the Liberty vote, and I do agree with that. There are many other people who I think would make decent cabinet members or maybe a VP, but for the number one spot, the numero uno, my choice is Rand Paul, hands down. Now, I know there are many people out there who are Trump supporters. And Trump had his own event. He had success with that, pretty much following what Rand did in the last debate. Rand said, hey, I'm just going to break off, do my own deal. And I think that worked out very well for him. Now, you can debate how well that worked for Trump, because Trump usually gets a whole lot of time in these debates anyway. Rand usually doesn't. So you can gauge whether or not it worked out for him. But I think in general, without talking about Trump or anything else, I'm very happy to see these candidates breaking off from the mainstream apparatus. They're saying, I don't need you. I don't want you. I'm not going to answer your stupid questions about fantasy football or whatever else. I'm going to go out here. I'm going to engage the people directly and talk about real issues. That's what Rand did. Now, as far as Trump, he was trying to appeal to the veterans, which, is fine. It's respectable, but I really wish he would have talked about more issues. That's what Joe Biggs discussed last night in our debate coverage. He says, as a veteran, I just don't want to hear, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that. I want an actual plan. So I do agree with Joe Biggs on his assessment of the Trump event. We need more issues, not just talking points. Now, my issue with Donald Trump, in case you missed last night's debate and you didn't get to hear the reason why I don't support Donald Trump, I'll go through it briefly here. Starting with Hillary Clinton. It's been Governor Jesse Ventura. He says wrestling is just like politics. I hate this guy, and this guy's the scum of the earth. And meanwhile, they're out having beers and, eating steak dinners and stuff like that. That's Donald Trump's relationship with Hillary Clinton. As much as he may talk about her, as she may talk about him, he invited Hillary Clinton to his wedding. So I'm not exactly convinced these guys are the most bitter of enemies, similar to what you saw Obama and Hillary do during their campaign. And of course, she ended up working for him at the end. Beyond that, in correction to what I said last night, I don't want to say he's an outright supporter of the no-fly, no-buy, but he has said he would definitely consider imposing a no-fly, no-gun buy, which we all know the no-fly list is a bunch of bogus stuff. They have little kids who can't fly on planes because they have the same name as somebody on a terror watch list. And that's another reason he wants to increase the domestic surveillance state, something very big, a big no-no. As I just said, Rand Paul has been railing against it. We here at the Infowars.com studio have been railing against the surveillance state. He said, hey, it's going to be huge. You got these guys crying about First Amendment. We need to get past all that. So that's another issue I have with Trump, as well as the many controversial statements he says. Now, I do respect that he says, what's on his mind. That's very admirable to me, even if I don't agree with it all the time. I do give him that. But that's enough time on Trump. Let's talk about on the other side of the aisle. We have Mrs. Clinton. And now, for all the things that she's doing, they're saying the officials, reports Fox News, are claiming that the Clinton emails are too damaging to release. They contain too much classified information and may put people at risk. Now, as far as public release, fine. If you say there's something in there that may endanger the guys in the field, so be it. But at least release it to Congress, to the Senate, whoever is going to do, or whoever should be indicting this woman, going against her for criminal charges. It's completely ridiculous that they would not pursue any charges on her just for the fact that there may be some confidential information in her email. Now, another thing that Mrs. Clinton is up to, she's kind of on this Bernie Sanders kick, where they just think everything should be free. And in particular, with Mrs. Clinton's case, she's saying that the people should pay the bills of America if they have the money to do so. Let's take a look at that clip.
The other thing we have to do is to change the tax system so that it is fairer. And I'm the only candidate running on either side who has made this pledge. I will raise your incomes. I will not raise middle-class taxes. I do not think it is right to be going to people who suffered because of the Republican recession and asking for you to help us make the investments for the future. I want you to take advantage of them, but I want to go where the money is, and the money is at the top. And that's where we need to be shifting our tax system. So we need to close the loopholes and the special gimmicks that corporations and the wealthy use, like this thing called the carried interest loophole that I've been against for years. We also need to do what Warren Buffett suggested. I was really very happy that he endorsed me, and I went to Omaha with him, and we were standing there, and he said, you know, I'm not too popular among my rich friends these days, because I think people like me should pay more money into our tax system to support our country. And he has something he calls the Buffett rule. Anybody who makes $1 million should have to pay a 30% effective tax rate. So I've adopted the Buffett rule, and we're going to go right at it and try to get that done. And then I want to go further. I want to impose what I call a fair share surcharge on incomes of $5 million or more. Now, there aren't very many of those, but there's a lot of money there, because I want to use that money to make college affordable. I want to use that money to invest in clean energy. I want to use that money to move toward paid family leave so that families get more support to be able to do their work at home and take care of their family. I want to use that money to help bring down the cost of child care, which in some states is as expensive as college tuition. There are things we can do that will relieve the burdens on middle-class families, and the money should come from those who have it.
And I can guarantee you that she's not talking about her paying those bills. Now, let's talk about the gun show loophole. To switch gears here, that's something I hear a lot about, and a comedian actually did an undercover video and tried to debunk the gun show loophole. Of course, I know it's a bunch of bull. I've bought several guns, whether they be at official gun shops, the big box stores, gun shows, and every single time I've bought them from a dealer, I've had to go through a background check. So let's take a look at this guy and his experience.
What is this?
This is a NICS background check.
Oh, I thought at gun shows you didn't have to do a background check.
Oh, no.
Okay. I know technically you can't sell it, but are any of these fully automatic?
Negative.
Real quick, sorry, I'm in a hurry. Can I get a gun here without a background check? No. Son of a...
So there you have it, because many people think it's just running wild. It's the wild, wild west when you go to a gun show. No, these guys understand that they do have agents or, feds, whoever go in there trying to set these guys up. They're very much aware of the law. They don't want to get busted and spend 20 years in prison. So if anybody thinks that it's just running wild, no, it's not the case. Now, you can private sell, but official FFL dealers, they definitely do go through the paperwork. Now, for our final story before we go into more special reports, vaccines. You don't hear much about vaccines because the laws Reagan passed pretty much make sure that you wouldn't do it. But we've seen kids die of vaccines in Syria, in Mexico. They never talk about this on the news. When they do talk about it on the news, it's Katie Couric with the girl who's dying from some vaccine, and they got the doctor over here. All those things are very rare. And now Don Salazar has the article, Vaccinations Suspended at a UK School After Up to 15 Students Collapse. And of course, this is just something they'll say is completely harmless and natural, but anybody with a lick of common sense knows that's not the case. So let's end with a special report from John Bound talking about the Zika virus.
Brought to you by the world's deadliest creature, the mosquito.
Well, there's no specific treatment for Zika virus disease, and there's no vaccine. However, we have seen that most of the cases are mild, or some of them do not even show any symptoms.
Currently, a vaccine for Zika doesn't exist, but the necessity of one could bring Bill Gates' lifelong world depopulation preoccupation one step closer to its IBM and Microsoft eugenics industrial complex vision. Zika virus, a virus spread to humans by the Aedes aegypti mosquito, the same mosquito that produces yellow fever, dengue, and chikungunya, and is found in the Americas, Africa, Asia, India, and the Pacific Islands. Symptoms in adults are mild and can last for several days to a week. Health officials are now questioning whether the virus has long-lasting neurological and muscle-weakening effects similar to Guillain-Barré syndrome. The most prevalent danger of Zika involves microcephaly, causing stunted brain development in babies. The BBC reports, health officials battling the Zika virus in Brazil say as many as 100,000 people could have been infected in one city alone. About 3,500 cases of microcephaly have been identified in Brazil so far. But before we sound the alarm, there is zero evidence that the Zika or Zika virus could be causing the microcephaly outbreak.
Giant scam. I've been to this rodeo many times before with viruses and so-called diseases being caused by viruses. And in my recent article at No More Fake News, I run down the useless and deceptive laboratory tests that try to define how, for example, the Zika virus is causing babies to be born with smaller heads and damaged brains, and the science absolutely does not hold up. But what does hold up as a cause of this happening, and I believe there are multiple causes, and you need to look to Brazil, for example. You are talking about gigantic amounts of pesticide use down there. They use more pesticides in Brazil than any country in the world. Any country in the world. And many of these pesticides are banned in 22 other countries. So you're talking about highly toxic substances in the very area where they're reporting all of these, deformed births.
Oddly enough, though, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation funded Oxitec mosquito release experiment conducted in Brazil last year preceded the explosion of microcephaly cases in Brazil. Brazil, home to over 200 million people, and the 2016 Rio Olympic Games is losing the battle. The Associated Press reports Brazil's health minister says the country will mobilize some 220,000 troops, but he was also quoted Tuesday as saying the battle is already being lost. Castro said that nearly 220,000 members of Brazil's armed forces would go door to door to help in mosquito eradication efforts, according to Rio de Janeiro's O Globo newspaper. Door-to-door mosquito eradication efforts? Something the totalitarian gun-grabbing White House administration could swoop down and capitalize on if an outbreak occurs in the United States. Now, evidence of the Zika virus reaching the United States has been confirmed. The Los Angeles Public Health Department reported one confirmed case of the Zika virus in the United States after a teenage girl was diagnosed after traveling to El Salvador in November of 2015. The LA Health Department states, quote, "No transmission of Zika virus infection has occurred in Los Angeles County. However, Aedes mosquitoes are present in the San Gabriel Valley and in the eastern part of the county. At this time, local transmission is unlikely. It would require an Aedes mosquito biting a Zika-infected person and then biting others," close quote. Which wouldn't be an issue if our immigration laws were actually enforced. However, potential Zika-infected humans are crossing the U.S. border every day. But never fear, Bill Gates and his eugenics-based obsession God solution is here. With the blessings of the United Nations, the Oxitec Corporation secretly released 3 million genetically engineered mosquitoes into the Cayman Island mosquito population, devastating the native mosquito population by 96%, which sounds like a victory. However, the male genetically modified mosquitoes are spliced with protein fragments of E. coli and herpes. that act as the kill switch when they mate with the female native mosquitoes. Oxitec argues that male mosquitoes don't bite, but studies discover the genetically engineered females had been released with the males in smaller numbers. Plus, the potential for a human to inhale or expose a wound to the genetically engineered DNA is blatantly being ignored, as is the potential for the mosquitoes to develop a resistance to the lethal gene and or breed in infinite quantity if exposed to the nature-infused pools of the tetracycline they need to survive. Currently, Bill Gates' Oxitec plague of genetically engineered mosquitoes have not yet been released into the Florida Keys as planned. But it appears that Brazil's plight and the hype generated by the mainstream media may twist the arm of the FDA to allow the inevitable catastrophe to move forward. John Bound for Infowars.com.
Shane Steiner's involvement with InfowarsLife.com truly happened in an organic way. I went to high school with Shane, his brother, knew his parents well, and he was visiting the office once, hadn't been to the office in years, and said, wow, I noticed you're making and selling supplements. Do these really work? Because I've tried a lot of supplements as a workout enthusiast, and I really think most of them are hype. And I said, here, take some home, try it. Well, a few weeks later, he came in blown away and said, I want to buy 3 boxes of this stuff to give my friends and family. It's simply amazing. He said, why does it work so well? And I said, listen, go to InfowarsLife.com, watch the informational videos with Dr. Group and others. They understand how it all works. I know that it works for me. That's all I understand. The science, the facts, the research, people's testimonials, they're all on InfowarsLife.com. You can check it out for yourself.
I wanted to go to the gym. I wanted to push myself and work out harder, and that led to me being able to come out and do stuff like the barefooting and the surfing and stuff like that, which I would have never done. I never would have done that 2 years ago.
Shane has said over and over again, more than just libido and energy, it made him want to get into the gym more. It made him want to get in better shape. And believe me, the Steiners have amazing genetics. His brother is a world champion steer wrestler. His dad, Bobby Steiner, is a famous world champion bull rider. They've got natural genetics. But when you added this to the mix, in Shane's own words, it took him to the next level. Shane noticed the mental clarity. Bobby was able to work out longer and gain muscle mass. He's already completely shredded. I gotta admit, for me, the biggest effect has been libido. Now, I've never claimed to have a body like some beach model, but back when I was 20, 22 years old and worked out every day, I looked great. But over the years, and being married, having 3 kids, and working 18 hours a day, I gained basically 100 pounds. And it's been a long process losing that weight in the last 4 years. But if you look at the photos and the videos of what I looked like 4 or 5 years ago versus today, the results are dramatic. I'd already cleaned up my diet, I was working out hard, but I'd only lost about 20 pounds. It was adding the other key ingredients from InfowarsLife.com that helped me personally go to the next level and shed another 35 pounds.
This has actually made me feel so good that here lately, about a year ago, I started training jiu-jitsu, and that kind of led to doing some boxing and kickboxing. I mean, it's amazing that 2 years ago, I was on the couch and couldn't even tie my shoes, and now I'm training with MMA fighters and just doing stuff that I never thought that I would be doing ever again. So Super Male Vitality has allowed me to do some amazing things, and if it has those kind of effects for me, I know that it will do great things for you. So just try Super Male Vitality. I promise you, you'll love it.
And finally, let's look at Anthony Gucciardi, Infowars.com reporter. He also works with Dr. Group and others, helping develop the newest, most cutting-edge, high-quality supplements. Let's take a look at what happened when he tried to barefoot ski for the first time with the Steiners. And remember, we're not making fun of him. He had the will to get in the arena, and he's lost more than 10 pounds in the last few years of fat and gained more than 10 pounds of muscle. And Anthony chalks it up to Super Male Vitality as well. Bottom line, folks, you want to discover the power of super male vitality and super female vitality for yourself by visiting InfoWarsLife.com today or by calling toll-free 888-253-3139.